Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Part four of popular culture, and following on last week's homework, where I asked you to look at some advertising this week. Unsurprisingly, let's talk about advertising because one of the things that drives popular culture is the need to get your attention. This is why we did money, time, attention economy, and the key to helping to capture and drive your attention and your spending habits and your time use habits. One of those keys is, of course, advertising. And the way advertising works is actually quite odd in some ways, but it makes sense if you reflect on it. But to understand a lot of the nature of what happens with popular culture, it is necessary to understand the nature and function of advertising and how it influences everything about how popular culture works, popular culture industry, what's made, how it's distributed, how it's presented. Everything boils down to, in some ways, a lot of this boils down to, not everything, of course, but a lot of this boils down to this nature of advertising. I mean, advertising is about give or take, direct advertising is about $1 trillion a year. So that's a pretty, it's 1 or 2% of the global economy, depending on how you score things. And then you have all the indirect advertising, which we'll talk about, which probably doubles that number. So it's a significant percentage of the entire global economy is advertising, which is to say it is worth companies to spend time and money to try and get your attention because you have attention available to give, again, your time budgets, and you have money to spend, again, your disposable income budgets. And because of those two things, it is likely worthwhile for companies to spend a significant amount of money, again, over trillions, on getting that attention and affecting your behavior. And then remember, this all comes back to an attempt to influence the way you actually behave in the world, which we don't think about very often. But there is vast amounts of money being spent by lots of smart people using computer modeling, psychologists, psychiatrists, every market research, all designed to alter the way you behave. And so we tell kids, don't run with a bad crowd because they'll influence you and you'll get bad habits. We say, be careful the habits you pick up because they're hard to break. We always talk about this concern with the way people's behaviors are being shaped and the people they're with and all this. Probably one of the big ones that we're missing is the fact that there's an entire global industry that spends lots of money and has incredible amounts of research and smart people working for them, all designed to give you habits and then to exploit those habits. So this is an important aspect of popular culture. So to get us rolling here, to get us started on this, thinking about it, I want you to imagine for a moment, then I'm going to ask you to pause the video and write some notes and then start it again. But I want you to imagine that you're a billionaire. You've got hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of disposable income. You can be cash in your pockets. You have very large pockets, apparently, stuffed with cash, and you can go buy anything you want. Now, what I want you to do is imagine now, and this is where I want you to pause, make a list of all the things that you cannot buy, even though you have those billions and billions of dollars burning a hole in your pocket that you're ready to spend. So pause the video, take a moment, a list of things that you can't buy, even though you're a billionaire, and you have all this ready cash. Okay. Hopefully you paused there for just a little bit and took some quick notes. Shouldn't have taken too long to generate a list of things. When I taught the class, people's first response to this question in the class was generally to laugh, right? The notion of, it's hilarious to think, well, you're a billionaire, what can't you buy? But if you made the list and thought about it for a little while, pretty quickly it becomes clear that there's a lot of things that you can't buy. You can't buy skills, for instance. Anything that requires a skill, like playing the piano, or dribbling a basketball, or making cake, whatever the skill is, and there's an infinite number of skills. These cannot be purchased. Now, we'll use the piano as the example. Now, pianos cost a little money, and lessons cost money, and having the time, this is probably the best use of money, having the time available to play the piano and study it is all money can do that, but the actual doing the practice, focusing, taking the time can't be done. that is not purchasable. You actually have to do that. And this is one of the examples of what do people want, and it's a realistic thing to want, or I think a natively good thing to want. Oh, I'd love to play the guitar. Oh, I'd love to be able to run a marathon. Oh, whatever it is you might be interested and love to do, that's skill-based. You can do, you can acquire the skill, speak a foreign language, paint, whatever. However, it can't be purchased. So you can buy a program like, I don't know, some Babbel or Duolingo or whatever that helps you learn a language, but you actually have to do it, right? So it always comes back to this, you have to do it. So you cannot purchase skills. And think of how desirable skills are. They can't be purchased. Experiences, right? This is one, like there are certain experiences. Now you can spend money to have the opportunity to do them, but let's say you decide, I want to sail around the world. Okay, that's great. Now, that might cost money, or you could just crew on a ship that's doing this. I've talked to many people who've done these sorts of trips. None of them were billionaires or millionaires. Most of them were actually quite poor because, of course, when you're just sailing around the world all the time, you tend not to make money. So it makes actual total sense. But even if you're rich and you say, okay, I'm going to spend a bunch of money and book a charter thing and go around the world for, I don't know, 12 months, 14 months, 8 months, you fill in the blank. While you're having that experience, there's quite literally an infinite number of other experiences that you're not having. And so the experiences that you can have, only you can have, and there's a finite number you can have because there's a finite amount of time. Genes, this is a big one. You can get medical care to help you if you have genetic problems, or maybe you're born short, not as tall as you would like to be, or whatever genetic thing like you might have wanted to get. Like, yeah, those are not evenly distributed, and people get random capacities and abilities, which we'll talk about in a second. But like our genes, we're stuck with those pretty much so far. Maybe 10 years, who knows, 20 years, we might actually be able to do something about that. Family, think about the impact that your family has on you, and that you by definition, you just get them, right? You can get rid of them later in life. But by that time, by the time you're to the place where you can get rid of your family, like a lot of water is under that bridge, right? A lot of things have happened. A lot of shaping influences on you have already occurred, for good and ill. So that notion of not being able to choose family, in fact, not being able to control your past, you can think about how your past affects you, reflect on your past, but boy, that past is out there. And like your family, even with billions, you can't. I guess you could kind of try and delude yourself and create an artificial past, which you then believe, which would be an interesting approach. Knowledge, any kind of knowledge that you want to acquire, you actually have to go and study. Again, maybe this is like a skill like playing the piano. But I think, if you want to learn something, you have to read and study, or go out and have related to the experience to gain that kind of knowledge and reflection and pay the attention. Like you actually have to do that. You can't have somebody. You can hire somebody to learn it for you, but it's really not the same thing as learning it yourself. Love, friends, sort of that sort of conjunction of things. Now, indeed, one of the problems, if you are in fact super wealthy, is that you fear that people might be pretending like they love you just for your money. This is actually a common problem. And people go, oh, wealthy people tend to marry wealthy people, which is statistically true. And people go, oh, there it is, it's classist or something. It's probably that too, shared environment, probably that. But part of it is, if I'm super wealthy and I meet somebody who's not, there might be that nagging suspicion in my mind. But if I meet somebody who's already pretty wealthy, maybe not a billionaire like me, but they're doing pretty damn well, then I know they're not after me just for my money, right? Maybe for something else, but not just my money. And so there's that sort of notion. And then the friends issue is a similar problem, right? Like if I'm just rolling in cash and I'm just burning, well, are these people here really my friends, or are they just exploiting me for my wealth to take advantage of that? And so in some ways, you would think a whole bunch of billions would help in this department, but probably psychologically it may create as many problems as it solves. And certainly you just can't go out and buy good friends. Part of it is a past, it takes time to develop the rapport, experiences, so you can see how these all kind of mix together. So love, friends, family, your past, psychological things, your sense of well-being. If you're driven to make money by fear of not having money, there turns out that there's no amount of money that overcomes that fear. right? People worry about losing money when they have $1 billion or 2 billion or 100. It doesn't seem to matter. This is a cycle. This is a mindset issue. But other things, sense of ease or peace, of a sense of well-being, enlightenment, if you want to go, get a little more grandiose in your thinking, any kind of psychological state. Now, you can maybe hire a therapist to help you out, or you can, remove perhaps some of the stresses in your life. But on the other hand, having billions of dollars probably introduces a lot of stresses into your life. Mo money, mo problems, right? This is the famous line. And so that is not going to help you with your psychological states of mind. And I'm sure you guys probably came up some more, but these are the ones that just come off the top of my head real quick when I penciled this down. And I'm sure, again, some of you guys out there have some that are not reflected in this quick list that I just ran through. But what you have here, as you think about it, are good things like a sense of well-being, a sense of self-worth, a sense of peace in the world, a sense of being someplace with friends and family and people who love you, or excitement and fun, right? And having that sense of joy in your life. Any kind of skill where you can do things, or you're having a loving family, having profound knowledge and insight. All of these things are reasonable to desire. Like, these aren't crazy desires. This is very human things that I think are probably good to want and to participate in our lives. But none of them can really actually be purchased. And this is the core driver of what we want to talk about today, which is advertising. Because the weird thing is, and the weird disconnect is, mostly this is what we want. We want to be admired. We want to be loved. We want to have friends. We want to have experiences that are great. We want to gain knowledge. We want to have a good psychological state of mind. We want to have, be admirable because of our skills and talents that we have, and to be able to use them in the world. A sense of efficacy tends to be very helpful for people's well-being. All of those are great, pretty much can't be purchased. So if you look at advertising, and this is why I asked you to look at advertising, look for some examples, what you'll see pretty quickly is that what is being advertised is rarely the product. Because most products do not do anything that address an actual core, deep, psychological, driving, profound need in human beings. Some do, so this is not an absolute, but most don't. So if you look at a shampoo, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of good shampoos. This is not, how do you sell a shampoo then? Well, you have to appeal to someone's sense of well-being, or to their sense of beauty, or to their sense of something that has nothing to do with the shampoo, and that a shampoo can't deliver. So a shampoo cannot make your hair beautiful. This is not a possibility within the realm of shampoo. It can slightly alter in some way if your hair, but what they do, of course, in the famous shampoo commercials is they take someone who has incredibly beautiful hair, and then they present that to you, and then they put a bottle of shampoo next to it, and you go, oh, it'd be great to have really amazing hair. And then somehow the association with the shampoo, there it is. But the shampoo, of course, doesn't deliver the hair. This is back to genes or skills or capacities, right? Like, this is mostly makeup artists and genes, and probably not that much shampoo. But they can sell shampoo, they can't sell makeup artists. Until you get to a much higher level of advertising. We're talking about general advertising. And so if you look around, this is what you find. This is endless. Beer commercials, the same thing. Oh, you're going to go to your friend's house. You're going to have a big party. It's going to be fun. People who love you and are happy to see you are there, and everything's going to be wonderful. Here's a beer. Now, it turns out that being at a party with friends who like you, in a place that's festive and where you feel good because people are happy to see you and everyone's enjoying themselves, and it's a good psychological, social space to inhabit, is a great thing. We should all do that. Beer does not provide this. Beer has nothing to do with this. Beer cannot deliver this. The beer is both unnecessary, and the type of beer is, of course, irrelevant. Maybe beer is necessary for some people, and there's nothing wrong with having beer at a party, but hey, it doesn't matter if it's one of 100 different kinds of beers. It's not the beer that makes it. It's not like if people showed up with the wrong beer, the entire party would die. Although there was a whole series of commercials built around this. I think it was the Bud Light had a series of commercials. And the idea was that if you brought the wrong beer, you would actually kill the party. But if you brought Bud Light, again, I could not, but I'm pretty sure it was Bud Light that had this. But if you brought the right beer, then the party would be great. So they made this metaphor quite literal in the whole sequence of commercials about this. Of course, we know this is silly consciously. Subconsciously, advertising works, otherwise it wouldn't exist. And there it is. Like, people feel like, oh, I need to bring the right beer. If I don't bring the right beer, I don't want to be caught with an off-brand or something, and we get nervous and self-conscious about it. And so it turns out that most advertising, most of the time, like 90% at least, is designed to present something to you that cannot be purchased. And then that is set next to a product and implied very strongly that if you have the right beer and the right shampoo, you're going to be super popular and you're going to get all the dates. If you have the right car and you drive it to the right place, then people are going to admire you. Your life is going to be awesome. You're not going to have any problems. Life is going to be great. And so on and so forth. Like, there's just so many. Colleges do this. If you go to the right college, as if it's the college that matters, right? Like, it's not the classes, it's not the studying, it's not the books, it's not the teachers, it's the college that matters. And of course, by implication, it's always like, oh, this college is great because it's got a good reputation, it's an Ivy League, it's the best in the country, or whatever. But lots and lots and lots of people go to these colleges and achieve nothing because, of course, it's a diploma mill, right? They're like, oh, I'm at a good school. As long as I graduate, I get the good stamp, and now I'm a good thing because. And maybe that even works because people see that you're associated with a good college. You stood next to it, so you're just become a product. You can't deliver the things because you don't have the knowledge, you haven't acquired the skills, but you've been to the place that is associated with goodness. Which is crazy, but boy, there you go. This is exactly how they charge. A lot of these schools are able to charge super premiums because of this notion that, if you're at the right school, somehow you'll be able to learn more, which is, of course, absurd. You can only learn as much as you can learn. And the world, particularly the United States, but even the world, is filled with endless opportunities to pursue knowledge in so many different ways that it's this obsession with good schools and best schools is it's another form of advertising and marketing. Schools spend billions of dollars every year trying to drive this as if that's what makes the difference for education. And you see this, again, throughout society at every level. And it is an endless press on us to try and get us to associate real human basic needs with products that can absolutely not fulfill those real human basic needs. This is kind of the idea. Perhaps one of the most glaring examples of this, particularly if you live in the United States, is fast food chains like Burger King and McDonald's, just use two prominent examples. So these people sell hamburgers and French fries. They've been selling hamburgers and French fries for decades, right? Decades and decades and decades. They have nothing to advertise. The only thing they can say is, we have hamburgers and French fries. So what the hell do they do? Stop making commercials? Well, of course not. This is not going to work. You have to keep reminding people that you have hamburgers and French fries, apparently. But they're always claiming that they have some amazing new thing. And this amazing new thing is going to be so great because it's the amazing new thing. The fact that it is the same hamburgers and French fries that they've been selling for 75, 80, 100 years doesn't seem to matter. No one seems to notice this, and so they just keep the advertising running. Or they'll make some teeny modification. They'll have a black bun for Halloween. Actual example, terrifying as it is, God only knows what they did to those buns to make them black. Oh, so now it's a spooky burger because the bun, which is the same bun, just with some sort of probably incredibly toxic food coloring added to it. Now you've got a spooky burger, and you want one of those, and your life will not be full if you do not have this. And it goes, and this just shapes so much. So you get the point. I'll stop belaboring that, I'm sorry, but it is important to recognize. Another aspect of this, though, little darker aspect of this, is that to get you to think that you need to buy a product that in fact cannot fulfill a basic human need, I need to imply very directly or indirectly or subtly or not subtly that you do not have this, that your hair is ugly or bad or limp or lame in some way because it's not the level of hair of, say, the supermodel that we've hired and who's been spent hours having her hair done by a makeup artist, professional makeup artist. Some reason your hair doesn't look that good. Well, there's a shocker. But now, so you're a little bit ugly. Much of the beauty industry, fashion and makeup and such, is dedicated to the notion that, you know what, you're just a little bit ugly, but we can help you. But if we don't tell you you're a little bit ugly, either directly or indirectly, then it makes it harder to sell you something. But now that I've made the sale, I've actually sold you a product that can't actually make you feel not ugly. Because A, if I did, then you wouldn't buy more products because you're like, oh no, now I'm good. Now I feel great. I don't need anything else because now I am not ugly. Maybe I'm even attractive. Maybe I'm even beautiful. Wouldn't that be spectacular? But what I do is I sell you a product that can't actually address the psychological damage that I've done. Micro damage, a little bit of damage. But when that little bit of damage is of messages that are relentlessly broadcast in print and billboards. I was just in LA, by the way. Good Lord, the billboards. I mean, can we make these illegal? Is there a reason these are not illegal? Some states, like Washington State, has a lot of restrictions on billboard. Turns out LA does not have a lot of restrictions on billboards, if any, as far as I can tell. So anyway, I digress. Billboards all over the place, TV, the content of movie and TV, which we'll talk about in a second, is this just relentless press to tell us, oh, your life would be better, i.e. your life's just not that good right now, if beer, potato chips, car, trip, makeup, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, somehow this thing is going to make your life better. The problem is that there's this psychological undercutting that basically gets you into a place where, oh, you do not have this wonderful experience of life being told you're wonderful and your life is great and you don't need to worry about things all the time. Quite the contrary, you're getting this relentless message that subtly or not subtly tells you, you know what, you're really not doing that well. And perhaps my favorite version of this, then we'll move on, is pharmaceutical ads, which I don't think they allow so much in other countries, God bless them. But in the United States, this is one of those weird things, is that the TV is filled with pharmaceutical ads. And this is just highlights the point I was making about advertisers have to sell you on things you want that the product can't actually deliver. And so one way to think of this with pharmaceuticals is if you have a drug that cures cancer, you do not need to run an ad for that. Doctors will prescribe it, patients will take it, done. Why spend money advertising? It's a waste of money. You're going to make all the money anyway. So the degree to which a drug is advertised is more or less inversely proportional to its effectiveness. Because the more effective a drug is, doctors are, if it's going to work and there's no alternative, doctors are going to prescribe it. You don't have to spend $1 billion advertising something. But if it doesn't work very well and there's a lot of alternatives that probably work as well or better, well, now I have to advertise it because there's competition. Doctors might prescribe something else that's cheaper that works better, and I don't want that. I want you to do the expensive thing that, who cares how well it works as long as you take it. This is what I'm interested in. And so pharmaceutical companies relentlessly, and I mean relentlessly, flog drugs that have unbelievably toxic side effects that may or may not help their patients. And the way you know that this is a dubious medical practice is because these commercials always say, ask your doctor about. And it's this big program to, one, try and convince you that you're probably a little sicker than you are. I saw this ad for dry eyes. Oh, do you have dry eyes? Oh, it's terrible. The worst thing that's ever happened to anybody is dry eyes. And they go on, we have this drug that might help you with dry eyes. this horrible, horrible thing that people have that's, apparently just life ending, according to the people in the ads. And their lives get so much better when they don't have dry eyes. It's just like transformed. It's a miracle. It's like they have friends and family. This is how the ad is portrayed. But the side effects are like, bleeding of the liver and your teeth fall. It's just crazy. Like it's unbelievable. So this is the pattern, though. There's actually I saw an ad, and I'm not making this up. It will sound like I'm making it up, but I swear I'm not. It was an ad. If you're on an antidepressant and that antidepressant isn't working as well as you would like, then this is an antidepressant that you take with other antidepressants to hopefully make those antidepressants work better. Ask your doctor, because your doctor is probably not going to prescribe 2 different antidepressants for you simultaneously. And the pitch is it not working as well as you want it to? Well, how well is an antidepressant supposed to work? I mean, are you supposed to be in a euphoric high 24 hours a day? Like, is this a good antidepressant, or is this probably a drug that should be illegal? That right? You see, so what it's promising is nothing, of course, because it says ask your doctor, your results may vary. So it makes no promises. One of the side effects, I kid you not, is suicide. So here's a drug that probably doesn't help you, that's being sold to you as something that may address the fact that the drugs you're on now may not make you as happy as you want to be. This is an interesting question. How happy should you want to be? So ask your doctor, because of course, medicine. And if he does prescribe it, just be aware that one of the side effects is, of course, suicide. So, wow, there's the whole, I don't know how much crazier this can get, right? Here is advertising par excellence. Like, this is advertising reaching out to you at the most fundamental level and trying to sell you something, happiness, that in fact it knows it cannot deliver. And at what risk? The risk is you may commit suicide, but it probably doesn't happen that often. So, all fair in love and war. So these sorts of processes shape everything about how our popular cultural, and not everything, much about how our popular cultural industry works. And part of this is advertisers want certain audiences. And one of the problems about this is the most valuable audience is 18 to 35. I mean, you can see this skew sometimes a little older, sometimes a little younger, but we'll just call it 18 to 35. And so if you think about something like TV, this demographic, this young target demographic, is more than twice as valuable. So an advertiser will pay $1, say, for someone who's 18 to 35, whereas they'll only pay 50 cents for somebody who's, say, 45 to 60. And so if you're going to make a show, and remember, in this case, if it's a TV shows, if anything that has advertising, advertisers are the customers, not the audience. So of course, I think everybody knows this, but just to repeat, like if you're watching something that have commercials, the show was made for the people who made the commercials, not for you. This is the key. So if you're a TV network and you want to have a show on there, you need to have advertisers for it. So you go, oh, look, here's a show that we think will get say women 50 to 65 years old. And the advertiser will say, that's great, we'll give you 25 cents per person. I mean, I don't know how much they give you per person, but it'll be 25 cents. If you make a show that gets the 18 to 35-year-old demographic, what we're going to do then is we'll give you $1. So it doesn't take people very long to figure out what demographic they want to make shows for. And it's reasonable to ask the question, like, why would this demographic be so desirable? And the answer is actually pretty clear and just totally logical when you think about it. If you're a 45-year-old professional, say, and let's say you're making a lot of money, let's say you're making $140,000 a year, so you're doing well. Statistically, on average, the problem is, one, there's not that many of you. I mean, there's a lot in the United States, but not that many. Two, most of your money is pre-spent. You probably have a house and a mortgage. You probably have a retirement account that you're funding. You've got a couple of expensive cars in the driveway. So great. So rats, right? Like you have money, but you've probably spent most of it. Also, you're busy. You're a professional. You got all this stuff going on. So wow, you're harder to reach, and you don't spend as much money watching TV, as much time watching TV, and you don't spend as much of your attention on those sorts of activities that make you susceptible to marketing. Also, the more education you have, and the more dedicated you are to any particular career or pastime or endeavor, the less susceptible you are to advertising. So this is a problem. If you don't watch a lot of TV, you're less susceptible to advertising in total. So the more you watch, it's like a multiplier effect. If you watch an hour a week, commercials aren't going to really affect you at all. But if you watch 50 hours a week, then they're 100 times more powerful, right? So there's this curve of repetition. You need to see repetition all the time. So even though you would think an older person with more money would be more valuable, it turns out that, a lot of their money is pre-spent. They've got a lot of their consumer habits are already established. They don't really want to change them at this point. It's hard to convince them to try different things. But if you're 18 to 35, particularly if you don't have a lot of education, this is great. There's a lot more of you, and you tend to watch more media, and you're more susceptible to advertising because you tend to be less well educated, and your habits tend to be more flexible and less well developed. So if I can get you to start, say, drinking Coke or Pepsi when you're 17, 18, or 19, probably you'll continue to prefer that for the rest of your life. So it's hugely valuable for me to get you addicted to my product when you're young so that I have more years to follow through with you. Which again is why Disney's thing is so important. Once I get the dream of Disney embedded in your mind, particularly when you're young, I can probably get you to consume some sort of Disney product for the rest of your life. And then when your kids start growing up, you'll think like, I want to share the things from my childhood with my kids. That thing's being Disney. And so boom, there it is. So it becomes this tradition, this thing that's handed down. And then of course, before you know it, everyone's in Disneyland for some reason. Again, as I mentioned before. So that's why Disney is the model here. And so what this means is certain demographics are far more valuable than other demographics. Therefore, our media, anything associated with advertising, skews heavily towards that demographic, their interests, their things they like. And so people say, people watch whatever they want, and that's what's on TV, or that's why these are the movies that are made. Well, this is absolutely 100% not true. Advertisers and producers make movies and products for audiences, and the value of those audiences skews what is made to a spectacular extent. So both the audience matters, and so a lot of the forms. My example is NFL has less people go to the games, more people watch on TV, of course, every year than go to major symphony orchestras. So if you look at the symphony orchestras in the U.S. major cities, and you look at the NFL games in the U.S. major cities, lots more people go to symphony orchestras, symphonic concerts than they go to football games live, even though football stadiums are significantly larger. So, but popular culturally, basically symphonic music does not exist in popular culture. And it's not because people aren't interested in it. Of course, there's orchestras all over the world. They have tours, all this stuff happens. But as far as popular culture is concerned, it's the wrong audience. This tends to be skewed to a significantly older demographic on average. Also, it's not a format that's easily accessible to advertising. And it's, these are not the people we want to reach out to. And what are we selling to them? It's a rough sell. So if you go to symphonies, I like to go to symphonies, you get the programs, there's advertising in there. It tends not to be Doritos. It tends to be other products. I mean, interesting products sometimes, like, investment funds, and because you can see the demographic they think is attending the symphony. But as far as a popular cultural institution, it gets zero coverage, despite the millions of tickets that are sold and the billions of dollars that are spent every year. Popular culture has no use for it. Also, the product matters. So if you're going to spend $100 million promoting a product, that product has to have an incredibly high markup. So this is why there's almost never, or rarely, very rarely, occasionally, but almost never, advertising for potatoes, right? And if you go to a grocery store, which again, grocery stores are just big advertisements, by the way, the fresh vegetables are hidden away. They're usually at one extreme of the store or the other. All the prime real estate, all the end caps, all this is for things that have high profit margin. So if you look at a potato, it's going to cost a couple of bucks for a couple of pounds, right? Like depending how much they're just not that expensive. If you look at a bag of potato chips, which is just a potato that's been sliced and fried in oil and salt has been added. This is not a complicated item, but it'll be sold, for a few ounces for several dollars. And so the profit multiplier on the potato chip relative to the potato means that the potato chips are advertised relentlessly. And again, the amount something is advertised will roughly tell you a lot about the profit margin, how much money there is. Because if you're, say, a small Italian factory that makes a few hundred chairs a year, you cannot afford a major multi-billion-dollar advertising campaign because you don't have the profit margin. So not only what is made and shown, but also what is relentlessly advertised to us is shaped by these forces, by the fact that you have to have a high profit margin, and that profit margin is only generated by certain items. And so the more expensive the medium, so if the fewer and fewer products are available that can actually meet the revenue and profit margins necessary to promote them. This is you can see that's just it's a math equation. And so both what kinds of things are made and what kinds of things are advertised to us are powerfully, and I mean powerfully, shaped by the fact that advertising costs and that certain markets are more valuable than other markets. It's just very simple. And so when you look at people go, oh, why do they keep making all these stupid Marvel movies? One, turns out they made a lot of money at the box office until recently, at which point people are apparently getting a little tired of them, which has always happened historically, by the way. There was the big Western craze of the 50s and 60s that then just died. Like people almost stopped making Westerns for a while. Now they make the occasional Western, but how many Westerns could you watch? It turns out a lot of them, and then they stopped making them. But, one reason is because the demographic that loved Marvel movies was precisely the demographic that you wanted to reach out to. And you could sell them T-shirts, and you could sell them magazines, and you could sell them comic books, and you could sell them action figures. It was the movies were not just made for the movies, they were made for the entire environment of products that could be associated with and marketed through the movies. If anybody saw the original Jurassic Park, I actually stood up and applauded during the movie, which is why you should never go to the movies with me, because I do stupid shit like that. Because in the original Jurassic Park, they go through a Jurassic Park gift shop that had all of the Jurassic Park goods that Jurassic Park, that the studio was promoting in the real world. So in the movie, they went to a gift shop where they looked at all the shit you could buy in the real. It was such a beautiful move. It was. I just had to applaud. I stood up and applauded right then because I thought, well, here it is. Like just this is so great. It's also why I don't go to the movies, because it's stupid stuff like that. But that notion is like, we're not selling a movie. We're selling billions and billions and billions of dollars associated with this movie. Well, only certain kinds of movies can really generate action figures. Only certain kinds of movies generate massive amounts of spin-off products, and only certain audiences will bother to buy that, right? Like Das Boot didn't have like a submarine spin-off, like Buy a Little Sub. No, it's not the kind of emotional, psychological, historical movie that makes one think, oh yeah, I want to get some Das Boot action figures and I don't know, caps for the German submarine fleet. I don't know what it would be, but it's that's the kind of movie that does not generate a lot of third-party sales. Not generally considered a spectacularly good movie, and I think it was exhausting and amazing in so many ways. But so big studios don't want to make movies when they look at them and they go, oh, where's the product? Where's the thing I can spin off? Where's the TV show? Where's the commercial? In one of the Star Wars, I forget which one because I can't keep track of these things, but they actually designed a whole sequence of like a racing game inside of the movie because they developed the racing game. They actually had already pre-developed a computer game, and they were just using this sequence in the movie to promote the computer game, and it worked. Several of the later Star Wars movies, which apparently everybody said were terrible, had already made money with licensing deals before they ever reached the theater. This is good, right? If you're going to make movies, this is a good way to do it. And so this notion that we live in a world of, it's just, advertising and, things are there, and because people buy what they want, then this drives how, popular culture happens and so on, is simply inaccurate. That's basically it. This is not what's happening. This is not influencing us. If you've ever looked out and said, wow, this seems kind of crazy and I feel detached and I don't understand everything that's going on, so on and so forth, that's vastly more accurate. Because even if you're in the demographic who's being targeted for all of this, there is this incredible degree of exploitation about it, because it's like so you're making a movie that's designed to promote products. When does that start diluting the quality of the movie, right? If the movie is not there to deliver me a quality experience, then what's going on? If you think about TV advertising, it's the same thing. These TV shows are made in theory so that people will watch them, but much more important is that the right demographic will watch, and they'll be susceptible to purchase the right kind of products that we can associate with long-running aspects of the show, and so that we can market these relentlessly and hopefully carry on for years and years. And so when you're in that kind of environment, and when you're subjected to this relentlessly, wow. I mean, it's really quite amazing to think about the influence that we're under. And so the more you're subject to this media, the more you're exposed to it, the more you get these sort of non-random messages to try and get you to behave in certain ways. And to try and get you to behave in those ways, they try to undermine your sense of who you are and your sense of well-being, and convince you that you would be better if. And so when we think about these, as we go forward, we're going to keep coming back to this, that sort of undercurrent in all of this is an unbelievably powerful source of how we feel about the world, how we see the world, and how we respond to it. And we often, I think, overlook this when we talk about popular culture and the media, because we act like, it's this sort of neutral set of movies and TV shows and what's on the radio and what's being streamed and what's coming up in the YouTube algorithm. All of this, when what's really happening is this is anything but a neutral environment. This is an environment that's being driven by advertising dollars and algorithms designed to drive our behavior that is carefully calibrated, I mean carefully calibrated, to maximize the profits of people who are spending the money on this. And just as a final example, just so you see how deep this goes, if you go on Google right now and search for virtually anything, the top stuff that comes up will be a bunch of product that is being paid for it to come up at the top. This is how Google makes money. If you go to like the ChatGPT or Bard, whatever, there's another one that's the AI one that they're messing around with now, and type in the same search for a product or a hotel or something, you'll get a completely different and generally vastly more helpful response. And the reason is Google is giving you the responses that makes Google the most money, not what is the best response for your search. Now, if their responses are so terrible that you never find anything, you'll stop using it. So it's got to be calibrated. But it's not calibrated to maximize you, it's calibrated to maximize profit for Google. Again, anything that's free, you're the product. They're selling you to the advertising agencies that are marketing things. These AI search engines that are out there and available right now have not been monetized yet, which is to say they're being subsidized basically by venture capital, and they haven't been turned into products yet. So you actually get vastly more helpful responses. I mean, incredibly more helpful, simply because they aren't being guided by profit maximization algorithms. And this is an experiment you can run. Try it out for yourself. But if you compare that, you'll just see like, oh my gosh, I was just on Amazon trying to order a book that I knew the title to. And I had to go off of Amazon and search for it there and then go back to Amazon because I could not actually get it to come up. They kept putting up other material or a version that I did not want to buy. And I just couldn't find, I'm like, I know this other version exists and it's not going to cost me like $27. And sure enough, eventually I was able to find it, but not on Amazon. I had to go off and come back because Amazon, of course, is promoting what they're being paid to promote and not what I'm actually searching for, in this case, by name. So it was sort of just another stunning example of this. But those are very clear. But this is through the whole of our society. If you go into a grocery store, what you're seeing was paid for. That was paid. The producers pay the grocery store chains to have those end caps, to be on display all the time. If you go to the movie theaters, this is paid for. This is not a reflection of what people want to watch. In fact, they don't care what people want to watch. It's a reflection of what the studios are willing to allow people to come and see, because the studios are the ones that pay for it, right? And it just goes on and on and on. And so one of the most important messages from this that comes out of advertising and thinking about advertising is this dual, we're in a world where in theory what's being presented is what we're interested in, but in fact this is rarely the case. And that the messages that are corresponding with that are designed to sort of undermine our sense of ourselves and then offer to sell us a product that has to have a high profit margin generally that we can consume in theory to help us with the thing that they've just told us that we need help with, even though that product almost certainly cannot help us. And so that is the bizarre never land of modern popular culture that is driven by this advertising impulse that is necessary, again, given that you've got a lot of people. How do you reach them? How do you affect their behavior? Marketing and advertising, that's how. And having said all of that, it is still, without a doubt and no question, we have more access to more things and more opportunities than any people ever in the history of mankind. So while we get this sort of negative aspect to this of being flooded by all these messages and all these contradictory statements and this endless attempts to undermine our sense of ourselves and our sense of well-being to sell us crap that we don't need and can't help us in the way that we would like, nonetheless, wow, no people has ever had access to the kinds of experiences and opportunities for knowledge, for gaining skills, for learning about the world, for products. Sometimes we like products. Products are good. We need them to make our lives work. So again, there's a lot to criticize and a lot to be suspicious of, but it doesn't reduce the element that, wow, we just live in this world of incredible possibility, which of course is partly why advertising works so well, is because we're overwhelmed with choice. So how do you sort through all these possibilities? How do you make decisions? When you start thinking that way, it makes you increasingly susceptible to these sorts of advertising messages. So as you look around the world, as you see advertising and marketing, just sort of, be aware this is what's going on and how it influences you. So next time, I want to talk about the first industry. Now we're going to do a whole series of industries. We're going to do publishing, TV, and then movies and streaming, TVs and streaming. This is all kind of blurred together. So we're going to look at these different industries. But the next one I want to look at is the publishing industry for books, which is this weird beyond belief, but it's one that is close to my heart, but also one that popular culturally is like, it's the book industry sells a lot of books still, but again, has lost a lot of prestige in the last 30 or 40 years. But we're going to start with publishing next time. So think about books and think about reading. So thank you very much.